Thank you very much, Mr. Mark. Indeed, you're right. I'm not a general, retired as a colonel. In fact, I would have liked to retire as a general, but that did not happen. Otherwise, let me take this opportunity to welcome all of us to this session of SemaNaSpox. I'm glad that many individuals, many media houses have been able to log in so that we can be part of this discussion of a very, very important subject, a very important sector, the sector of education. Also wish to apologize for the postponement of the last episode for reasons that were beyond our control, but here we are today to be able to pick up from where we left. In the last episode of SemaNaSpox, we had a discussion on various aspects of programs and policies and huge initiatives that are being rolled out in the sector of education. But the focus then was largely on the CBC. Now, arising from that discussion, there were concerns that were being raised with the general public that the time that was allocated for discussion was too short. But again, we do appreciate that the sector of education has got so many aspects to it that may not be realistically captured within the time span of 1 hour. So the basis of that reaction, we decided to have another session of SemaNaSpox, again focusing on the state of education. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased and privileged to have with us the PS, Professor Fatuma Chege, who is the PS State Department for Implementation of Curriculum Reforms. And with her, we have also, like we mentioned already by Mark, Dr. Elias Abdi, Director General, State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education. There are also reps from different agencies that have been mentioned. We have Dr. Ruben Tamburi Mugwiku. We have Anne Ngatia, Coordinator, Competency-Based Assessment. We have also Neema Subira, Deputy Director, Secondary Education. But there are also other two that are taking this discussion online. That is Madam Kezaya Wandera, Deputy Director, Quality Assurance and Standards, the Department of Curriculum Implementation. We have also Madam Josephine Nyangaga, Quality Assurance and Standards. Basically, this is a one-stop shop in as far as matters of education are concerned. And without much ado, I would like now to invite Professor Fatuma Chege to be able to lead the discussion from there. Madam P.S. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Colonel, for having me here and the team that is with me. And I wish to say good morning to all the viewers. Today, it's a very important day to have this discussion, firstly by noting that it's the 4th International Day of Education, where we look at education in a broad concept that is beyond being in the classroom, where education takes place right from when the babies are in the womb and continues until we leave this earth. It is a day that the United Nations proclaimed that we address issues of education. And this year's theme is on changing course and transforming education. It is really timely because we are having education reforms being implemented and unfolding on our very eyes every day in this country under the implementation of curriculum reforms, popularly known by the public as the CBC. One of the things that is being celebrated today is actually the rights for every child and every person for an education as a public good to safeguard our nations and our world and to unlock the potentials of every learner. And this unlocking is very much in line with the vision of the CBC, which is ensuring that every child is engaged, empowered, and ethical through the mission of enhancing the potential of every learner, regardless of their backgrounds, their abilities, or inabilities. My invitation is very well taken, Kano, because it has enabled my State Department and the partnering agencies to do what the State Department was established to do. The State Department, which was established in February this year, was charged with the responsibility of ensuring that there is proper coordination of implementation of curriculum reforms that runs through the entire education system, beginning from early childhood learning all the way to basic tertiaries and their colleges, as well as the universities, so that every arm of the Ministry of Education and its partners and actors speak from the same platform as far as the reforms are concerned. And the main thing is to ensure that there will be effective implementation of these reforms to enhance access, to enhance quality, to enhance relevance at all levels, to ensure that there is equity. So that is the driving force for this particular State Department. Colonel, when you invited me, you indicated the questions that are coming from the public and which we have also been listening to. And the main thing today is to look at the status of where we are in this implementation, specifically looking at the curriculum, because curriculum is the content aspect of any learning, and without it being in place and on course, then we shall be not doing the right thing. You also asked us to give a roadmap of where we are going based on where we are today. So I came along with my colleagues to help me to do that. Then there was also the issue of transition to junior secondary school, which is true, even ourselves, we've been listening. There are all these questions about transitioning to junior school, junior secondary school, where it's being domiciled and so on. So we also have that issue being addressed here today. The issue of assessment, where we are hearing concerns about many examinations, what is the role of the assessment, and therefore we have colleagues who are going to address that. And therefore, I do think that we are very well prepared to address that. And we shall also look at the context where we are finding the public being concerned, that parents are being asked to participate in the learning of their children, and some are happy with it, others are not happy with it. But we shall want to also address that question in the context of parental empowerment and engagement and community service learning. So without further ado, should we just go straight to the issues that were raised? And I will ask Ms. Subira to address the issues of curriculum, and I'm sure the viewers will have some questions on that. And then we move on.
Thank you, Prof. And good morning, viewers. I'm glad to be here. And really, the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development is charged with the mandate to develop curriculum and curriculum support materials that are informed by research. So even as I speak about the issues that were raised, it would be important for us to note that that is the core mandate of the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, and on a daily basis, therefore, the Institute is engaged to make sure that the CBC is then successful. And so, as we talk about CBC and some of the questions that have come forth, really, what is CBC? And I think it is important for us to know that curriculum reforms are very critical, and they happen time and again, and they are informed by changes in the socio-political, in the economic, and in the technological aspects. And we know that these are not static, and time and again, we will have these changes. And therefore, it is incumbent upon education to then look at how does it address those issues as they arise. And as you well know, our history has been such that the country has been undergoing curriculum reforms from 1967, immediately after the independence, and all the way up till today. So even as we find ourselves in curriculum reforms, this is not a new phenomenon, that we are actually responding to the issues that are coming up and ensuring that our learners get the best as they operate locally within our country, but also in the region and in the entire world. So the first question that will be relating to what have we done so far to ensure that we are implementing CBC as it ought to have been implemented. Now, just to go back to indicate how this process has been, we started with the pilot in 2017 and 2018, and then we had the national rollout. What probably our audience does not know is that that is not when this process began. It actually began way back in 2005, and a lot of things happened, a lot of processes went on, and these processes were informed by research, as I indicated. So even as we get to 2017 and you see things happening, there had been a lot that had happened before. And because of time, I may not be able to enumerate that, but we can engage as we go along. So in 2017, we started the first phase of that pilot. In 2018, and we started in PP1, pre-primary 1, pre-primary 2, and grade 1 and 2. And in 2019, then we had the national rollout up till grade 3. And so from then, we have grade by grade implemented the curriculum. Now we are at grade 5. The first cohort of CBC is in grade 5, and we are using the phase-in, phase-out strategy. So we are phasing in the CBC cohort as we phase out the 844 cohort. So the very last cohort of 844 is in grade 6. Now going forward, the Institute is working together, of course, with the guidance of the Ministry of Education and all other sector agents to ensure that the curriculum is developed, materials are evaluated, learning materials are evaluated, any other learning support materials for the teachers, whether they are offline or online, are developed in good time. And so far the government has actually procured books and that are already in use in schools up till grade 5. Grade 6 materials are already ready. They are actually going to schools in February and March. And we know that exams will be on, so the logistics will be worked on. That has already been done. The grade 7 curriculum support materials will be evaluated in March and April in readiness for junior secondary school. And given that scenario, then what is the roadmap as well? As I indicated before, it is actually a progressive implementation where we are moving from grade to grade. We are in grade 5 now. By the end of the year, we will be done with grade 6. So in 2023, we will be implementing grade 7. And that will be progressive year after year. And the very last question I would like PS to address that came forth is, how does junior secondary school look like in terms of curriculum? And how have we conceptualized it? And what kind of learning are we offering? And what the majority of you actually know as subjects? And just to indicate that when CBC was conceptualized, it was conceptualized as a continuum where learners are building on knowledge, skills, values, attitudes from one grade to another. So junior secondary school is building on what was done in upper primary. And junior secondary school is a very important transitional level because learners will be going to senior school. So, and we offer a very broad-based curriculum where the subjects that are offered allow learners to explore, identify their abilities, their careers, and they are able to then make decisions when it comes to senior school. So subjects that deal with language are on board English and Kiswahili. Subjects that deal with sciences, we have maths, we have integrated science, we have a new subject called pre-career and pre-technology studies, and this is what we otherwise know as technical and vocational aspects. So learners will be exposed to that because we need to know who are the learners who are gifted differently in various areas. They will also have, of course, opportunities to learn business studies, social studies, religious education, depending on whether they take Hindu religious education, Christian religious education, or Islamic religious education, given the diversity within our country and so on. So we will give them a rich curriculum, and then we will also give them options. Thank you, Madam PS.
Thank you very much, Subira, for that, and thank you for putting the context. And to just clarify to the public that as the historical background is given of curriculum reforms, the current reforms that are going on were envisioned in Vision 2030. When you want to make draw a vision for your country, education comes at the core under the social pillar, and it's something that people can refer to. Now, Subira has talked about transition from primary to junior and so on. Now, how will that happen? It brings on board the role of assessment. How do you move children from one level to the other? What is the basis? Is it credible? And so on. And I will call upon Anne from NEC to tell us about assessment.
Thank you, Prof. Good morning, viewers. When we talk about assessment, I think it's a critical question because it draws the roadmap of where we are going. It tells us how well we are doing. It tells us where we need to be and how to get there. And therefore, competency-based assessment is a paradigm shift from the examinations that we have been doing all the time, KCP, KCSE, and other examinations after secondary school. And therefore, as Kenya National Examinations Council, implementing the curriculum reforms, have been able to come up with a framework on assessment that guides all the processes, all the procedures of how to assess at different grades. This framework also gives us the purpose of why we assess. Many questions have been coming that we are assessing too often, but we need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of assessment? And mainly we assess because we want to find out how a child is doing, whether learning is taking place in school or it is just schooling that is taking place. And therefore, Kenya National Examinations Council has also been undertaking quite a lot of research to inform its processes. Beginning from 2018, we have been able to conduct pilot studies at grade 3, at grade 4, and at grade 5, just to find out how well our learners are doing. And the findings from these researches inform us on where we need to improve as the Kenya National Examinations Council, as the learners, and also as the teachers. Therefore, we note that a lot is changing when we come to assessment. We have been used to written kind of examinations, which now we are saying that yes, they are good, but we need to bring on board more other aspects as guided by research so that we are able to nurture, we are able to know the potential of every learner at every grade. Again, Kenya National Examinations Council now has embraced what we call formative assessment, which means that assessment needs to be done from time to time. We, for example, assess at the beginning of a lesson. Every teacher will assess that just to find out what prior experiences is the child coming into the classroom with. The teacher will also assess during the learning so that they find out whether what is being taught, the instruction that is taking place, is actually fruitful or is actually meeting the objectives of the curriculum. And finally, we also assess after a session has been done, which we call summative kind of assessment. And therefore, we find that in our framework, the new things that you'll be finding are quite different, are issues to do with the format with which we assess, because we want to make sure that the learner is actively engaged. We want to make sure that we are able to find out whether learners have competencies to become 21st century learners and to be able to compete globally with other learners in the society. And therefore, that framework that Kenya National Examinations has actually developed brings a roadmap into that. In order to achieve our objectives then, we have been able to continuously train our staff that handle examinations and assessment. We have also been able to train teachers to embrace the new assessment approaches and move away from the traditional kind of assessments that were mainly paper and pen. We have also been able to sensitize a lot of education stakeholders, the curriculum support officers, who are the ones who man a lot of learning processes at the classroom level or at the zonal levels, and are able to give quick feedback in terms of what kind of learning is taking place. We then find that when we embrace the formative assessment, we'll be asking ourselves, for example, when a chef wants to serve some food, they will automatically keep checking, keep testing that food, so that they don't present a product that is not acceptable by the client. And that is what Kenya National Examinations and basically the CBC is all about. Keep checking how well is learning taking place through many assessments, through multiple assessments that are of different nature, that take care of each learner. Noting that learners learn differently, and therefore we need to make sure that we nurture every learner's potential.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much, Anne, for that explanation about assessment for learning, and for ensuring that every potential of every child is being assessed, creating fairness and equity. And these two aspects of curriculum and assessment are in the context of this Africa protocol, where we belong to a wider community outside our own country. Our graduates move out into the East Africa community, to the Africa region, to the global world, and therefore these reforms are in response to that context, which is local and also global. So the curriculum and the assessment that Meg is talking about helps our children and our graduates to be able to move out into the world and engage with others that have gone through a similar context of education. I would like to call upon Dr. Ndamburi to tell us very, very briefly about what is happening, the status of teacher training, and what is the roadmap in very few words, because without the teacher being there, no matter what kind of a curriculum we have, no matter what kind of assessments we have, the person who is implementing on the ground in the classroom is the teacher. Dr. Ndamburi, very, very briefly.
Thank you, PS, and thank you, Government Spokesman, for inviting Teacher Service Commission, and on behalf of Nancy Macharia, we appreciate. I want to say that Teacher Service Commission coordinates teacher training for the primary and secondary teachers and teacher training colleges in the aspect of the competency-based curriculum. And the Teacher Service Commission usually gets content for curriculum from the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, and the content for assessment from Kenya National Examination Council. Then we coordinate through what we call a multi-agency approach, where we have the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, Kenya National Examination Council, Teacher Service Commission, SemaNaSpox, Kenya Institute of Special Education, and the Kenya Institute of Management, so that we can be able to have their lecturers come together. They are trained as national master trainers, and after they have trained as national master trainers, then we go to the counties and train what we call the curriculum support officers and the champion teachers who are well versed in the issues of CBC on how to train the teachers. Then the training of trainers, who are the curriculum support officers, train the teachers at the zonal level, so that the teachers are able to have a very short distance to the training center in order to be able to get managed in the training. Usually from 2018, what we have been doing as a commission, we have been training teachers on a face-to-face workshop for 5 days. But I want to clearly say the training of teachers does not stop after the 5 days. The training of teachers is a continuous process, where after training for the 5 days, we allow our curriculum support officers and the champion teachers to go to school and walk the teachers through the training, so that they can be able to know exactly what is happening in the class. One of the aspects we are really encouraging is the question of action research. What exactly happens in class? And that's why the training is continuous, in order to make sure that the teachers are well versed with the content they are training. I want to say CBC is basically a methodology which is centered on learner-centered, is a learner-centered methodology. And what then our teachers, we are telling them is that we need to realize the learner's potential, get what the learners are creating, and the teacher facilitates the learning so that it can be effectively enhance what they are really teaching and learning. And so our teachers basically enhance and facilitate the learning in class. And so we have been preparing them on each of the aspects. And I want to say also, another aspect of the competence-based curriculum is the use of ICT. We are really encouraging our teachers to really engage themselves in the use of ICT in the teaching and learning, realizing that in every primary school in the country now, we have the digital literacy program, which provided the gadgets for the learners. So the gadgets are the ones that are used by the teachers and the learners to be able to utilize them in understanding the concepts that are abstract and the aspects of learning. And the other aspect that I want to mention is the question of, we have begun also preparing the teacher trainers and the teacher training colleges so that they can train the new teachers that are coming out, and they are also going to be CBC compliant. I think let me stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbamburi. You have ended on a very good note that about the tutors, but also the in-service teachers. Those who are in college, they will undergo competency-based teacher education. Everything is CBC. The TVETs are also CBC, so it's running across the system. And we shall soon get a very brief presentation on how policies will help us to work together cohesively and comprehensively as one education system. But very, very quickly, Josephine, where you are sitting, please comment on parental empowerment and engagement and community service planning, very, very briefly, like in 2 minutes, where that part of our society comes in to drive our CBC and the education reforms, please. She's not there. Then can we have Kezia? And as Kezia, you come in, I think it's very important for me to point out that when you don't plan where you are going, then you are planning not to go anywhere at all. The State Department has been involved in various planning, development of the tools to help the reforms move, and capacity development. And I would like Kezia, where you are sitting, please comment very briefly about the role of policies, which is one of the functions in our State Department's guidelines and frameworks to ensure that these reforms are operating within a cohesive roadmap. She's not there.
Happy to unmute. Accept and unmute.
Good morning to the Kenyans who are viewing, to those who are listening. So, from the understanding and Professor's clarification that this State Department was established for the sole purpose of oversight and coordination of the curriculum reform implementation, then there are a number of things that we have done which are envisaged to guide the reform implementation and to ensure that it is effective, efficient, inclusive, and well coordinated. So first and foremost, we are revising existing legal and policy framework, and in the same breath, we are developing a new set of policies and frameworks, because you realize that we need to anchor the various CBC initiatives on a sound legal, policy, and regulatory framework, as well as to clearly spell out the implementation protocol. Some of the policies that are being worked on include the Basic Education Act, the National Education Sector Strategic Plan. We are developing a framework to guide transition from primary to junior and senior secondary school, a framework for coordination of the reform implementation and guidelines for implementation of basic education. Another thing that we are doing as a State Department, and which is very important for efficient, effective coordination of the reform, establishment of oversight and coordination structures. You have heard from the speakers and from the peers themselves that this State Department is coordinating a multiplicity of stakeholders and organizations, first-line actors as well as education stakeholders. So it's important for us to establish structures that we are cascading to the national, to the institutional level, so that we can work together as stakeholders within a sector-wide approach in order to ensure that everything flows and as it is intended, and we get to actualize the reforms in time. So we are establishing committees, we are establishing organizational and departmental level committees, multi-agency level committees, to address both the technical aspects of the reform implementation and the communication. We are also establishing a policy level committee which is going to oversight the broad curriculum reform implementation. And then the process of conceptualizing transition committees, which we hope will operationalize at both the county and the sub-county level to support the coordination at those different levels. We are strengthening education and cross-sector collaboration and partnerships with our multiple partners. This includes the county government, it includes the technical education, vocational and training sector, it includes the Ministry of ICT, for strengthening of integration of ICT. This includes the sport and talent development centers because of that specific pathway at senior secondary school. And so we are also working on strengthening of stakeholder technical capacity as one of our very important mandates. And we are training our first-line CBC actors. We are training national governmental organizations, ministries, departments, and agencies that have a role to play in the curriculum reform implementation at different levels.
Thank you. Thank you, Kezia. Thank you very much, Kezia. The important thing that Kezia is raising is that for the implementation of curriculum reforms to be effective within the entire sector, we have developed the tools. We have established committees running all the way from county transition and the implementation committees, going down to sub-county, to the classroom, to the school implementation committee, so that everything runs smoothly. And the important thing is to develop their capacity. We didn't get Josephine, but before I call the DG, I want to very quickly mention about parental empowerment and engagement without going to much details. We know that this has been an issue that has concerned the public since the CBC was rolled out, that parents are being involved in the work of their children. The main concern that we have been trying to address is to point out that parents, and you have listened to Dr. Ndamuri here, he didn't say that parents are supposed to be teaching the curriculum at home. We are saying parents need to be engaged in the education affairs of their children. And we have KICD, we are preparing a program that will help empower parents on how to engage in the education process of their children. We are not saying that they need to teach the curriculum at home, but they must be involved. Many of us who are at my age, we know our parents were involved in our educational careers. They were interested in our educational careers. They did not have to be literate, but they would always ask whether we have completed what the teacher has given us. They would always tell us their reaction if they ever be called that we are not doing what they used to call the teacher's work, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to go into the details of that, but we do have a program which KICD is developing that will help to empower parents. Parents seem not to know what is their role as far as education of their children is concerned. They know how to pay the fees and do all those other things, buy uniforms and so on. But the interest and engagement, what is that engagement? We are saying they need to be empowered, and we are preparing for it so that also teachers are able to engage those teachers meaningfully. Now, where we are in these reforms, we are still at the basic subsector. We are at the basic level of implementation. We have been told we are now at grade 5, and therefore a lot of activities of this implementation are happening there. And we have our DG. I would like to ask our DG, Dr. Abdi, to tell us what are these activities that are going on currently where the CBC has reached. I know there's a lot of activities going on.
Thank you very much,
Madam Pierce, and thank you again. We want to really appreciate the work you've been doing in the State Department of ICR and for really coordinating us since February last year when the department was put into place. And having worked very closely with you, I think we've achieved a lot of successes in ensuring that this curriculum is rolled out as expected. So as the PS has already put it, I'm sure the viewers are also getting to understand that the curriculum is developed at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. It is implemented at the school level in the classroom by our teachers. It is assessed and examined at the Kenya National Examination Council. And us from the Ministry of Education level, together with the PS, we are at the center of it in terms of providing direction. For example, in the State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education, we have been able to support our SAGAs, same autonomous government agencies like the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, the NEC, to ensure that at least they get the resources that they require to be able to do their mandate, their functions, and all that is required. Equally, we are, as a country, providing free and compulsory basic education as the requirement of our Constitution, specifically Article 53. And therefore, as a country, we are financing enormously our basic education subsector. For example, every child in primary education gets 1,420 shillings in form of capitation. Every child in our secondary school gets 22,240 Kenyan shillings annually. And this is a country that spends close to 26% of its annual expenditure on education. Internationally, it's recommended that we spend 15 to 20%, but we're way above that. So we are doing our best in terms of ensuring that we resource our education sector. And therefore, unlike other, curriculum reforms, and remember these are curriculum reforms, it's not a curriculum review. We are entirely reforming the entire curriculum system of this country. Unlike others that were done in the 1960s and the movement, especially 1985, 844, this is a curriculum as we reform. We're even giving a textbook to every child in all the subjects they do. In primary education, for example, from grade 1 up to grade 5, where the CBC priority class is, every child in our country, in all our public primary schools, has a textbook for all the subjects they do. The plan is still to do the same for junior secondary education and senior secondary education. And I want to say here that in January 2023, when the J1 class, and you see now the terminology is even changing, junior 1 is entering the junior level, the country will be ready for it. I'm sure you're aware, classrooms construction has started, and we're putting all measures in place, the teacher training, all. As you can see, we are all moving as a whole. Whatever is being done at KICD, implemented at the school, assessed at NEC, coordinated from the Ministry of Education headquarters, specifically under PS Fatuma Chege, we are all moving together as a whole. And therefore, we believe that we're going to get it right. But I also want to mention here, at the State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education, we have so many officers outside there and up to the sub-county level. We have education officers, we have quality assurance standards officers. These people are also compliant when it comes to CPC. They have been trained and prepared and retooled, because the quality assurance standards officer, who is supposed to assess the teacher in the classroom, is expected to know more than the teacher. And that is because he or she has been a teacher in the past, and also is not supposed to supervise the work of the teacher. They have been also trained. We have done, we have looked at also our basic education registration guidelines. So even those in the private sector who want to open up maybe schools under the CPC, they're able to know, at least they're able to know what's required of them. So when they want to start only a pre-primary standalone school, or early grade, or junior secondary, or senior secondary, all the provisions are there. We have relooked at our inspector's handbook, the quality assurance officer's handbook, that they use to assess schools and teachers. For example, when a quality assurance officer goes to class, he's supposed to have a lesson observation sheet to observe that lesson. And that we have already revised and made it CPC compliant. Equally, the whole school assessment tool has been revised. So it's just a question of systems go. Everything has been put in place. And we just want to assure the country that, we have put all measures in place to ensure that this thing succeeds. But at the end of the day, we are not saying learners must not have individual effort. They have to have individual effort. Yes, we're not naturally every learner's potential, but learners will still have to work hard. They must score good grades. They must perform and go to preps, go to the library. They should be able to read. Nothing comes free. With all this government is putting and investing in, it's still hard work is required. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG, for those remarks about now what is happening on the ground, and importantly about mentioning the free primary and secondary school education, because there is this misunderstanding that it's very expensive. The fee is paid by government. But if your child is in secondary, just like you feed them at home, then you pay for that feeding and where they sleep and how they bathe. And also the whole issue of unlocking every child's potential. They need to work hard in their areas of ability, because the issue is competency. Competency-based. If your teacher through assessment realizes your competency is in the arts, then you are expected to learn about the arts and the performance and what needs to be done. And that is where the greatest effort will be, so that no child is actually frustrated through the process of schooling. Like we have had in the examination that Anne was talking about, children had to pass certain subjects regardless of whether you are potentially capable of achieving the competencies in those particular subject areas, or even whether you have an interest, because it's a question of competency and interest. That's what the passion that drives somebody to become whom they were created to become. And the teachers under TLC are being capacitated to identify that spark of every child, so that we help them and guide them to pursue that which they are able to do best, and which they have an interest, and which will give them a meaning in life, to themselves, their families, and their community, to the country, and to the world. Thank you very much. Kano, I think we finished the session.
And thank you very much, Madam Pierce, for that very detailed presentation that has covered many aspects of the CBC. We have looked at the roadmap of implementation. We have looked at various committees that have been established up to the grassroots level to ensure that even the community is involved. We have looked at assessment. We have looked at teacher training, which has been a concern that some of the teachers may not be competent to be able to, implement the CBC. But we've seen that the teachers are being trained. There's also in-college training, whereby they are all taken through CBC. So when they come out, they're actually CBC compliant. Thank you very much for the detailed presentation that has highlighted many, many issues of CBC. But we're also aware that within this space of time, we cannot be able to go in greater detail about very, very important aspects of the CBC. But this introduction has also certainly, set the ball rolling in as far as acquiring knowledge and information about the implementation of this very important government program and project is concerned. Now, with the permission of the MPs, and I wish to invite Mr. Mark to be able to allow the public to also participate in this session.
Thank you ever so much, Honorable Okuna, our government spokesman, the PS trade and the team. I don't know that can be heard. The PS trade and the team, we thank you so much for such an incisive and detailed cover of how the CBC curriculum is not only being implemented, but also its historicity and where it is going in terms of ensuring that our learners and the future of this nation is indeed in good hands. We cannot thank you enough. Let me just start with the first question, and the first question I received is quite interesting. It comes from Facebook. The question was, what happens to those who need adult education, those who are within our prison system, or for some reason or another have failed to enter what is normal school? So how will Baro, I think it was called back in the day, how does it plug into the CBC? If you have any questions and you're here on Zoom, please raise your hand and then we will give you a chance to speak. But that is the first question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for raising a question about those people who are actually outside the system. And we are now in the wave of CBC, Competency-Based Curriculum. And the Director General, I believe this is in your docket. Please respond.
Thank you very much. So in the State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education, we have a directorate called Director of Adult and Continuing Education that supports adult and out of school youth. And we have always been taking care of people who are in one way or another were not able to go to school because there are people in special circumstances. And therefore, we have been giving opportunities to those people. For example, there is the opportunity where they sit private exams. Any citizen who wants to sit, for example, the KCP, you register as a private candidate, KCSE equally, you register as a private candidate, and at least there's a center in every sub-county where people can continue with their education. Equally, with the prison as the prison service, we work very closely, and that director, specifically the Director of Adult and Continuing Education, works with the prison service, and almost all our prison or postal institutions have teaching and learning going on. And you must have seen when, for example, the KCC and KCP results are released, they are released alongside also learners who are in these institutions. And as a ministry, we even pay visits to those institutions once in a while in our process of quality assuring. And we work very closely with the prison authorities and their boards that manage that at the prison level where we are members. We join those boards as a ministry, and that arrangement will continue to exist. And that directorate is still there. They are housed in the Insurance Plaza, 13th and 14th floor. Any citizen who wants more clarification can meet the director on the 13th floor of Insurance Plaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just to confirm to the public that when the task force, I simply call it the task force of CBC because it's a long name, and when I say that, the public understands that this particular directorate that the DG is mentioning actually made its presentation in the context of CBC. When we look at people who are in prison or adults out there, most of the learning and the activities they do even in prisons have to do with competencies, being able to do things, so that when they come out of those correctional establishments, they are able to go out and get themselves practically using their competencies and make a living. So this is completely in line with competency-based curriculum, and that directorate is very much on top of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that answer. We did have clarity for those who are in our postal institutions, our prisons, and those who wish to have adult education. Now, Vincent Muller, followed by Dominic Kihara, I will give you a chance to ask your questions directly. Please remember to be polite and quite precise in asking your questions. So I will ask you to unmute Vincent Muller. You can go first.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Bonamulu.
Yeah, my question is on the cost of CBC for those who are in private schools. Maybe Madam Yes or whatever can address that. And then when are we expecting the first exams on the CBC? And then the last question. I can see under the she talked about local students for those who cannot access the computers and whatever. How do we ensure global competitiveness for those who are like in Garissa and in Nairobi?
Okay, thank you. Those are three questions. The first question was about costs in private schools. Number two, when can we expect exams? And number three, if we're talking about localized replacements for those things that need computers, how will these students remain competitive within the global stage? Those are the three questions from Vincent Muller. Let's answer those first, then we go to Bwana Dominic Kiara.
Okay, thank you. Very briefly, I will talk about the cost of CBC in the private schools. Of course, we appreciate that the private sector is a good partner for providing education in this country. And also to mention that we've had a lot of engagement since the State Department was established with the leaders of the private school association. We've had several meetings and engagements. Now, when it comes to costs, as has been mentioned here, the government pays and provides goods and provides infrastructure like the classrooms for the public schools. The private sector is actually the way it is an establishment that is privately done by individuals who are interested in providing education. And therefore, the issue of cost, I would believe that it's part of the business plan of establishing a private school and not part of the government responsibility to meet those costs. What we have learned through engagement with the leaders, but particularly the CEO and director of private school association, and others like 5 for English, 4 for maths, which increase the cost, and then the blame is given to government. We have discussed with the leaders, and I remember in one meeting being told that they have started identifying those schools and making them to pull out some of the books that are not necessary, that are increasing the cost. Basically, that's what I would want to say about the cost of in private schools. And just to repeat that everything has to be done within a plan. The Ministry of Education has its strategic plan. In that strategic plan, the private school is not part of that planning. So it would be really unfair to start telling government and ministry to fund the private schools. DG maybe will say something, but let's hear about examination. The issue of examination is coming again. That when we grade 6 seat examinations, they already have gone through several assessments that will culminate to something. And
okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Vincent, for that question. As I said earlier, that CBC is embracing formative assessment, whereby we don't wait until the end when the child has finished primary to assess them. So we are already giving school-based assessments at grade 3, at grade 4, and at grade 5. And these assessments are being given by Kenya National Examinations Council, but are being administered by the teacher. They are being scored or marked by the teacher, and the reporting is also being done by the teacher, so that the teacher is the one who is taking full control of what competences the learners have. The first summative assessment will then be conducted at the end of grade 6, because this is a key stage where the learners are completing primary school as they transit to junior school, and this will be offered by NEC in December 2022. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much, Anne, for that. DG, this issue of cost. I saw you shaking your head. You want to say something, and Subira will talk about the digital devices.
Thank you, PS. You know, in her opening remark, the PS said education is a public good. And that means education basically largely is a government responsibility. It is provided through public resources. And education is one of the commodities that's never entrusted with private hands. Because if we say, for example, education should only be run by the private sector, then the poor or the masses will miss out. And that's why, as at now, majority of our schools in this country are public schools. Recently, when we had the pandemic, so many private schools closed, and the majority of the students again came back to the public sector, because the public sector are schools of, where the public is accessible, and the public are accessible to it. Looking at, for example, our secondary education subsector, the best schools in this country are public. The private sector are way behind. But in primary education, many private schools are doing well in terms of maybe examination performance, and then parents tend to be attracted to that. But all we want to say here is that the private sector, usually we have not been regulating as government. what they should charge as fees. It is mainly regulated by market forces. Because as a private person, you are in business. If you charge very expensive, fees, then you may not even get students, and then you don't get learners. For example, our private schools in Nairobi, what they charge is different from what is charged in Nakuru or what is charged by a private school in Garissa, because the socio-economic, situation in Garissa or Mandera will not allow you to charge the same fees as in Nairobi. For example, we know private schools that just charge 1,000 shillings per month or 2,000 shillings. We have the low-cost private schools, for example, around Kibera, Madari area. Some of them charge as little as 200 shillings per month, 300. But equally, we have high-cost schools. In this city, for example, there are schools that are charging family 100,000 shillings. So it is about the affordability for specific parents. And so we have left it to market forces to determine. But as for government, the public school is there for the masses, for the citizens, to be able to access it as required. And we have even put it in law that no admission fee, for example, should be charged in the Basic Education Act. For if you are taking your child to a public school, that does not mean that the public school, classes are elastic. You can admit anybody anytime, because also we have to limit the class size and all that for learning, effective learning to take place. So I will just say that for now, appears on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The bottom line, the DG is saying that we have choices. And I can assure you that some of us know parents who have removed their children from those private schools and back to the public school so that they can get these free goods and free fees and so on and so forth. It's a choice, and the private is in business. Thank you very much, DG. There's a question about digital learning. It's been a concern in the public about how we are going to ensure equity for every learner. One of the things I know after engaging with the other partners is that this is something that is happening in partnership with the Ministry of ICT, with the Ministry of Energy, and it's not a one-person show. So it's a multi-sectoral approach in order to ensure that equity happens. We are told if you want to go far, work with others, and that is what the Ministry of Education is doing about this digital learning, as it provides curriculum and examination and teacher training and so on. There are other sectors in this country that are charged to ensure that we can have digital learning.
Thank you, Prof. and Vincent, for that very critical question, because one of the core competencies that we are actually insisting on is the competency of digital literacy. And we realize that the global world is already there, and therefore it is important for our learners to also acquire that competency. So, considering the diversity within our country, we are aware that the government, through the digital literacy program, has gadgets that are already in schools, and in our monitoring of the implementation of the curriculum, we have actually gone to schools, even some of those that are extremely remote, and we find that those digital literacy devices are there. So what we have been doing in some of the programs we have had is just to sensitize the teachers to the fact that they can use those digital devices. And KICD, cognizant of the fact that we have those diversities, what we have done is we have uploaded the digital learning content on a platform called the Kenya Education Cloud. So, and what we are requesting the teachers to do is to then download these materials so that they are accessible, so that they do not have to be online. And this can be used when they are teaching in the classrooms. And we have developed materials for all the subjects up till grade 6. And if they go to that platform, WWKEC, the KICD website, then they are able to access this material. Alternatively, at our KICD bookshop, we actually ban those, and they are able, those who are close by are able to access those materials. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Subira, for that. And also to mention that we also have seen the data of the distribution of smartphones in this country that can be used for that purpose. The DG You want to add something on this?
Yeah, I wanted to supplement that question, and thank you, Supira, for effectively handling it. And we just want to say that as the DG, I'm also the chair of the academic committee at KICD. And in the academic committee, what we do is that we process rather designs and syllabuses before they are released to the schools. And so this aspect of digital literacy is something that we cannot run away from it. We have to confront it, and our citizens must acquire it. Because even now here we are, many of you are watching us through Facebook, Zoom, and this is it. This has become the way of life. And the education as a sector cannot also run away from it. We have to take it up and ensure that we become digitally literate. Out of the 7 competencies in our CBC, digital literacy stands out strongly. Because even a requirement later at the workplace, even if you are self-employed or you're working in a formal place, and this is it. So we have started the journey as a sector. One of the things, for example, we have done is today, as we meet here, almost 90% of our primary schools are connected to a source of energy. They could be connected to the digital to the national grid, or they could be connected to solar and so on, but they have a source of energy. Equally, many of our secondary schools are also, and that is the beginning. We have already done that. Equally, under the digital literacy program, the gadgets we have distributed to all schools, our teachers, and even the training that is going on, we are training the teachers on this. So the use of technology in education is a very old thing. For example, if you can remember, those of you who have gone to school in the 80s, we have for example, the old radio broadcast that we used to have. Then, and this again was being broadcast live from KIE. Currently, it's called KICD. Then later, the use of technology came in. For example, we have now the education channel, KICD, for example, now has a TV channel. It has an entire directorate of education media services. We are now talking about the Kenya Education Cloud, which is again hosted at KICD, where even these books from our publishers are found in that cloud. And this information is available all over. Then the other thing is that we are also enhancing connectivity, because recently we have been asked to, the UN community said that we need to revise the right to education also to include the right to connectivity. I mean, without connectivity, we are not doing much. And therefore, that's the direction we're going. We have already started, for example, the Minister of ICT is laying the cable throughout the country, and almost every other county, the cable is there, the internet cable and all that. So as a sector, that is our, we may not have 100% coverage, but I want to assure the citizens that we've already started the journey. And, these are, plans very soon that will be accomplished. And I'm sure any person viewing this will see that it takes time for us to be able to comprehensively cover every other school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdi. You said you started the journey. I thought you were going to say there is no turning back.
Yes.
And when I was reading about today's day, the International Day for Education, it says it's not business as usual anymore in education. And I'm sure, Dr. Ndamburi, 2 seconds possibly about teachers, because we have heard that the public, their parents complaining that they are being told download this, I don't know, download that, I don't know what, and they ask, what is the role of the teacher? Dr. Ndamburi, very quickly.
Thank you. Yes, the role of the teacher in the competency-based curriculum is facilitation. And one of the aspects that we have done in the training of the teachers is how to use ICT in making sure the learner understands, the learner is also communicated, and the parent is also communicated. I want to report from the Teacher Service Commission point of view, every teacher now downloads a payslip online. There is no more manual payslip. A number of services have also been digitized so that every teacher will be able to access services as required. And therefore, teachers have gone ahead and began utilizing ICT, and particularly the gadgets that are in the school. So the issue of the teachers today, when you look at what is happening, we are having very many young teachers who are actually digital literate, quite digital literate, and are able to do quite a number of other aspects. The teachers who are a bit older, we have taken them through continuous training. So they have also been able to utilize the gadgets that are in school. And many of the teachers today have Android phones that are able to deliver messages. A teacher can use a phone, can download a video to teach in class, can use voices to teach in class. They can use the content from the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development radio channel or the TV and many other platforms that are there. Quite a number of teachers, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say during COVID, were actually teaching using remote learning. And that for us, it was a great plus for this country. And we have a program where we have trained quite a number of teachers on handling the remote learning methodologies. And I want to assure the country, even if we could have a challenge now, our teachers can deliver learning through the remote learning. And that's a plus for this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mark, any other question?
Yes, so there are two people online who would like to ask a question. Dominic, I'll ask you to unmute. Please keep your questions short and polite. Dominic, I'm asking you to unmute. Go ahead.
Yes. How are you? Thank you, Mr. Mark, for the opportunity. My question is, first of all, I want to thank the government for what they are doing in ensuring that our education system runs from the past style to the new digital style. So my question was how, because even in the private sector, how is the government trying to incorporate the private sector now that all of us are dealing in the same sector of education, so that when we apply any child, because any child educated in Kenya is a citizen of this republic.
All right, go ahead, Madam Pierce.
Thank you very much, Dominic, and I would like to start from the last concern, which I think is really, really important, that parents will complain because they do not know or they do not understand how they come in. The suggestion that Dominic has made is very, very important. It's viable, and that's what the State Department is doing. The only thing is that we haven't quite reached to the ground because, as I started by saying, you have to plan how to do something. Otherwise, you'll be going to the ground, back on the drawing table, back on the ground. And as we speak now, we have developed the guidelines for transition committees. We have developed frameworks for coordination in our work plan, because we have a work plan that runs all the way to 2025 in this new State Department. In our work plan, we have the public engagement with stakeholders. We have a plan of how to move around the counties, and these stakeholders, one of the major stakeholders is the parent. And therefore, we have these county implementation and transition committees. We capacity develop them, work with them so that they are able to work with us also on the ground, particularly when it comes to stakeholder engagement on the CBC. We appreciate people will complain when they don't know how. They feel they're not knowledgeable, they don't have the skills, and when they are capacitated and sensitized, it makes life much easier for them. And I believe this is what Dominic is talking about, and it's a very, very important suggestion, and we are on top of that. Now, the private sector is coming back again, and I would like to say that as we stand here, there are some private schools that are very, very busy expanding their primary to the junior secondary school. And again, I don't know how to say this, with a lot of humility, that, for example, if I begin my business, maybe a hardware shop and so on and so forth, I must have a business plan. If my level of operation is at level 1, I work on that level 1, and then expand, diversify. The next time you will see that I am a business person, not only in Kenya, doing that hardware business, but in the region and so on and so forth. So there is that we, working within a plan. And also I know, having worked with the private school section, and they were well represented in the task force. They made their inputs. They were always there. The report of the task force on CBC, their inputs are there. The stakeholders talked after the State Department was established. We have been talking with them. But at the same time, I don't think we can ask government to work outside a plan. And if you are a business person with a private school, I think it's a question of going step by step and diversify. DG, this is your docket. We are already in basic education and they are concerned.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dominic Kihara, for those concerns and questions. And it's good. We are having an interaction on this. I mean, when we talk about private schools in this country, there are two categories. There are those that are pursuing the national curriculum, and we also have the international curriculum offered, especially in our main urban centers like Nairobi, Nakuru, Mombasa. We have a few international curriculum private providers. But I just want to say that maybe it is the aspect of financing that the government is not there, but we do support our private schools in the sense that, government is the one that regulates and even provides licenses, the registration certificate. That today, if you have to set up a private school in this country, the guidelines are still from government, they register and all that, a report from the public health. We do that equally, just like the public schools, we also assist you in terms of quality assurance and standards. Because you must have been seeing government officers coming to your schools, trying to see how the curriculum is being delivered, to support the teachers. And in some places where the officers have not been coming, schools have been writing, requesting for that. And we've always responded to that, writing to the quality assurance standards officers. We come to your school, we quality assure, generate a report, and then you present that to your boards of management at the private school level. And that has always assisted in terms of improving quality at those private schools. Equally, you are doing the national curriculum, so you are still pursuing the designs and the curriculum of the country. When it comes to examination and assessment, our private schools are equal beneficiaries. We do give you that. On the other side, our private schools are a strong voice in almost all our decision-making organs. For example, I know at the subject panel level, course panel at KICD, in terms of developing the curriculum, at the academic committee where I sit, the private schools have a strong voice there. They are members in all that, including the National Steering Committee of the curriculum development. So when it comes to supporting and financing private schools, we are not yet there, and I'm sure you understand that. Because at the end of it, when the government priority is to finance public education, that is the main priority. And so at the public level, government is giving teachers, giving capitation, textbooks, putting up facilities. Because at the end of it, when you're working out the unit cost of education, mainly we look at the tuition aspect, the teaching and learning. That is why even in our boarding schools, or government boarding schools, even primary and secondary, parents are still paying for accommodation. They're the ones putting up dormitories. They're the ones paying for this, food and accommodation. Because at the end of it, education is about the teaching and the learning, and that is what government is paying for. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Just one.
All right.
Maybe just one more question. Yes.
Oh yes, on private schools.
Yes, correct.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to mention that government also supports the teacher training for the private school teachers. During the training at the zone, we expect all the private schools to give their teachers. From 2018, they have always been in the training. And that has been part of the government public-private partnership that has been there. And so our teachers in the private school have not been left out during that session.
Absolutely. That's very, very important, because I know TSC just says, bring yourself to the venue and you will be trained. That's how it operates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. Maybe just the last question, Mark.
Okay, let me just combine two questions from Caroline Mumbi and Georgina from K24. So Caroline will go first, and then Georgina, then the panel will answer. Also, Madam PS, Josephine Nyanganga is back available if she's still needed to speak. Yeah, that is the case. So Caroline Mumbi, I'll ask you to unmute, and then immediately thereafter I'll ask K24 to speak. Caroline Mumbi, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mark. So my question is on the ICT implementation as the speakers have elaborated. Now, my concern is when it comes to the provision of learning materials. When a teacher is very eager to facilitate in the digital literacy learning, has the government factored in the provision of data where a school does not have a Wi-Fi? And in this case, I'm talking about being in a public school, because I'm thinking you would want some finances for downloading if it is materials on the KICD cloud.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I will ask Georgina Magondi. We'll ask you to unmute and ask your question so that we answer both questions together. Georgina from K24, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And maybe my question is about the placement of senior students to the grade 1 next year. And that is what criteria is going to be used to ensure some student is going to school. And is are the schools still going to be ranked according to how the normal ranking, or what will determine which category of school will a junior secondary student go to?
Yes, Madam PS, those are the last two questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Caroline, for your question on the ICT, which seems is a major concern, and which I said is multi-sectoral engagement. You have asked about learning materials, which I know Subira will talk about. But from the data that we have, and Subira has talked about that, is that firstly, the gadgets are there. Is the issue of the Wi-Fi, which I know that ICT is on top of the game. I know recently I was with a team that went around the country to launch the connectivity in various schools in this country. And again, there is no going forward. Like, I know myself, I was in Untitled Chapter, and I saw what is happening with the help of the State Department for ICT in enabling schools to access that Wi-Fi in the cheapest way. If possible, I may not be able to talk about the technicalities. There were technical things that was being shown fixed near the schools and so on to ensure that there is Wi-Fi in the school. And I saw children in grade 4 and 5 carrying out their classroom activities and using their gadgets in class, and there was Wi-Fi. Now, the learning materials, I don't know if you want to talk about that in relation to the ICT connectivity and getting the Wi-Fi. I had to say you can download, you don't have to be online all the time, and so on.
Thank you, Madam PS, and I thank you, Madam, for your question. And I do really appreciate your sentiments. And I think what KICD has done, it has taken cognizance of the fact that it is not possible to be online throughout the learning process. And therefore, whether we are talking about the radio lessons that are aired by KBC on behalf of KICD, whether we are talking about the AU channel programs that are aired on various topics in the subjects that are offered at school, or digital content that is already packaged in a manner that it is easily downloadable, and therefore you do not incur a lot of expense. But I understand and I do concur that there is an element of cost. And I think the DG will talk about that element of cost. But as KICD, then it is incumbent upon us to provide that material and to just encourage you as teachers to find a way, even through the school system, to see how you can then access that material, not necessarily online, offline as well, so that the learners can have an experiential learning engagement. Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to add anything on ICT before we go to that?
Well, the cost and aspect of of the downloading requires some cost and all that. I think because even when we're doing the assessments, Kenya National Examination Council sends items to schools. That has initially, we had some challenges, but I think all the schools now are used to it. And I just want to say that when it comes to the cost, the schools are financed through the capitation grant. Every child gets some amount of money, and I think the schools are able to get some support on that. Of course, we have already said that every child in our primary school gets a textbook for all the subjects they're doing. At the local sub-county office, in case of any a shortage of books, we have always been having a buffer zone that we can use for replacements. So in terms of that, there's some specific voted. We have the tuition voted. We have administrative costs. In terms of, we guide the schools to use the same amount to download.
Okay. Thank you very much, DG. In my short stint at the State Department for Implementation of Curriculum Reforms, I've also gone around the schools just to look at where the source of this concern is coming from. And I have seen in some schools, in connection with what Dr. Abdi is saying, where teachers, I found them going on and the teacher has his phone and he's telling me he's tethering. Tethering for me is something I just learned very, very recently. But they told me, because we don't have where I'm tethering, with the gadgets and everything goes on well. And also, depending on the, on the zeal, enthusiasm, and commitment, and the call of the teacher in that profession, they are able to do that. Now, Georgina has raised the issue of placement. Now, what I would want to say about this placement is that NEC, and Anne sitting here, they do their assessment, is cumulatively recorded, and it's in the custody of KICD up to the final summative that gives them 40 and 60%, and the rest is left to the Ministry of Education under a policy of placement. We cannot have placement happening haphazardly. But what is important is that we are in the process of doing the policy for placement of G7, the grade 7 junior secondary school, and that policy will guide how placement is going to happen. What is important for Kenyans and the public to know is that these children will not be being placed based on how they have competed with each other, on how to pass science, on how to pass English, who had the best days in English. It is their competition with themselves, as has been assessed through NEC, that is indicating where their competencies are, and where the schools that are best placed to offer teaching and learning of those competencies are. But I don't want to go deep into that. We are developing a policy that is going to really, really streamline and indicate how placement will be done in this new dispensation of implementation